But they were great families, and everyone kind of stuck together. People grew a bit of veg in the back, or kept chickens, or that sort of stuff, And there was one family had they kept pigs. The Lundgren's, famous, well-known family. They ended up, the Lundgren brothers. They ended up owning a bakery down in Bridge Street after Lundgren's Bakery, on the site of the original Jacob's biscuit factory. But they were great characters: John, Joe, Eddie, Billy, Little Mo. They had nicknames and all that. And the woman was Mrs. Lundgren was a great. Cause she was just one of those kind of people that would knock a living out of anything, So there was the Roaches. The man we assumed the best blasts in Waterford were made by Roach's Bakery on the Glen there, just down from Ballybrick. And Colin Roach was the chief baker, and they were living in number 2 somewhere else there. And the blahs, people queuing up for blahs early in the morning. There were balls of flour, that's what they used to say, with a big lump of country butter on. There was eating and drinking in them, as the older people used to say. But that was the scenario, that was the situation in Summerhill Terrace, the type of families. And there was a number of families. There was one family, the Murphys, some of them as were in the circus. They used to travel around, kind of, presumably Ireland, but maybe England as well. And sometimes, they'd have stuff to do with the circus, tables for elephants standing on, and all that sort of stuff. These sort of characters. So a lot of people worked. A lot of the people would have worked in the cellar, which is Denny's, was known as a cellar. I'm sure you heard it. And so, as I said, some people getting work around the docks, and some of my family worked in road freight, uncles and that sort of stuff, in the CIE road freight, which was the depot in Sally Park. So, the picture I'm pointing out is that it was a hugely busy place, and it was a centre of kind of activity and commercial activity, and there was jobs there, and so you had that allied to the docks, and then it was adjacent to O'Connell Street, where O'Connell Street, George Street.
It was elderly people, Ali. It was kind of like the residential homes. But when we were involved in the Dominican, we formed a youth club. And one of the first kind of youth clubs was down in the basement in the Fannin House. And we used to be down there. We used to have Brother Pascal, was a very well-known. He was a brother that came from Rome, and he ended up becoming an official priest, But we used to always call him Brother Pascal. I just saw his grave at Ballybeg in the Dominican Plaza out there the other day when I was out there. So they done their best to accommodate us. We had a boxing club down there as well, and we had kind of table tennis and that.
My father was a teetotaler, Ollie, all his life a pioneer. So were his brothers. Drink was taboo completely.
Why was that? Was there a reason why all the brothers were?
I don't know really. It was a big thing at the time, though. I mean, I mentioned about being a member of the Altar Boys. Being a member of the Pioneers was a kind of another club that you could belong to, a kind of a place to go to meet other like-minded non-drinkers, if you like. It was like Sodalities. It was like the Legion of Mary or something. They were big clubs, that people just went to maybe once a week and that. And to have a Pioneer pin, it was like a medal of some distinction, going around. And they did prominently have it up their lapel, always. I remember kneeling down on the lino saying the rosary as a family. I don't know why we were saying it, but we were saying it. The family that prays together stays together. That was the big phrase at the time. And you'd be kneeling down saying the rosary, yeah. And you say the full 5 decades as well. You say, after a while, you say, can we cut it short now? We've said 2 glorious mysteries or whatever. We have to say the 5, and that went on And my parents, my mother and father, they always attended Mass. My mother would nearly always be in the front pew as I was coming out. She'd be a regular Mass goer. My father as well. There'd be a picture of this Sacred Heart, and there'd be a little kind of a red light in front of it flickering That was a big thing. You had to have a big picture of the Sacred Heart, Jesus there, and all of that. So, it was a religious enough household, yeah.
But there was only a tiny little house. You almost nearly had to bend down going into it, you know. But she had, like, her cousin was over from England, and her grandmother was living there. So there was my mother, let's say Granny and Grandad, Mammy, there was Betty, there was Margaret, there was Michael, there was Harry, there was Davy Condon. Now, then there was also her cousin over from England, Maura Carberry, during the war. She came over here for a safe place, and her grandmother. So there was 10 of them in a 2-bedroom tiny little house, but they managed, you know. And any cooking I do now for Dad even still is Mammy's recipe. There, the Chester bread I made for you, there was Mammy's recipe. And stews and ribs and cabbage and fish and whatever I do is all, I always remind her, even though she had dementia, Mammy, only few wouldn't know how to make that because I didn't learn anything in school.
You know, so the Olympia was the social place to meet. Another social place was from in summer evenings from the clock tower down to Reginald's Tower on to Parnell Street and back up Michael Street and down to the clock tower again. That was for walking. And it's just hard to believe it now, but like you see, there were bicycles then, but there was little else, and people walked an awful lot in those days. So a lot of summer evenings, boys and girls would walk down and they'd walk around this walk maybe 3 or 4 times before they'd back up maybe to town and home. And if there were girls that were, you know, particularly like you changed your journey, if they were walking the same way as you, so you would meet into them on the reverse way.
We did play cowboys and Indians, like down around them lanes and over by the Union Hall. And then you had the Fannin House Institute, that was across the road. And that was a complete, that was like something out of a horror movie. When you see horror movies today, you go over there and there were all kind of trees going in around it, and it was real kind of eerie, you know, in the winter nights and things like that, you know. But we actually had a kind of a relation to my mother's in there, a man by the name of Johnny Wallace. And my mother used to often boil a few eggs and say, Billy, would you bring them over to Johnny? And he used to go over and go in. There's big gates when you go in, and then you had a big reception area. But when you go in, like, I don't know how many people a house or anything, but it was really, what do you call it? It was really old. So, but you had big walls around it. And then when we were involved in the Dominican, it was all.
That was for kind of homeless people, wasn't it? Kind of
No, I think it was elderly people, Ali. It was kind of like the residential homes.
Denny's was there, yeah, where hypermarket eventually became SuperValu is there now. Denny's was a massive kind of meat processing plant. They made sausages there, and it was the smell out of this awfully kind of a smell. At certain times of the week, you get this massive noxious smell coming out of there. So my father worked there for a while. Cherry's Brewery. Again, if you're talking about smells, there was a massive yeast kind of smell coming out of there nearly all the time. My uncle Paddy O'Brien worked there, and they made their own beer there. Phoenix.
You never go down there.
I remember going, yeah, I think we kind of went in and around, you might be told to get out of there because the ESB was our playground up at the back of Rockfield. Now, transformers and wires, and Drippin' O'Mara, God be good to him, sadly no longer with us, but he used to climb the pylons. Ollie, I'm serious, he nearly went to the top of these. He could hear the crackle of the electricity. Scary, it's like climbing up the Eiffel Tower. And he was like a goat, he'd just go up all the ladders and we'd be looking up at him. We were terrified. We'd maybe go to the first base. He'd go nearly to the top. It was unreal. And that part of, Rockfield Park, ESB, they were your playgrounds. Cherry's Brewery, you go in around, have a look. You'd see all this, you look in and you'd see all these vats and wires, or not wires, kind of all sorts of beer being made in there. But they made Phoenix, as far as I know. Then they made Hoffman's, and they were a big concern. Cherry's, to get a job in Cherry's, you were doing very well. Like, it was loads of Waterford people worked there. It was a very cherished place to work, and it seemed to be nationally known as well. I think it went into decline for a while, but it's come back again. I think there's some whiskey thing going on there now. Oh yeah. The Waterford Glass was number 1. But Cherry's was good as well. ESB would be a great job as well. But Cherry's Brewery was in the hierarchy of good jobs, it was up near the top.